Hello, my fellow gamers. Today, I'm going to be talking about some of the misconceptions, some of the frequently asked questions, and then also we're going to have a PSA about the Ball Lightning solo, self-found, not really, trade league, hardcore Hierophant that I've been playing. If you haven't seen the initial video, please do check it out because you're not going to understand anything that's happening in this one if you haven't seen the build guide. And then after this video, we're going to have another one where I'm going to be discussing all of the gear upgrades that I've gotten since, because in the original build guide, I virtually had nothing. So let's begin with the most interesting part, I believe, a PSA from GGG for you guys. Many people have been questioning whether or not the Wrath aura that you get from your Totem Specter actually works on spells. You get Lucky Hit and you get a Wrath aura. It only says the attack part of the ability. And I would gladly like to report that it has been confirmed by GGG that unfortunately, for all the haters, it's supposed to work. But actually it doesn't. To quote directly, so there is no confusion, Specter's Wrath aura will be looked into to mirror player's Wrath, which means that fortunately it will get changed. But as of right now, we are missing out on 25% more damage, which I thought personally could potentially be a balancing thing. But it turns out that it's supposed to work, but it just doesn't, because they're still working out the gems, which is very good because some of you guys might have thought about switching the Specter, changing to something else, maybe using Wrath instead of Zealotry on your Divine Blessing setting, and that wouldn't actually work because the higher level Wrath from the Specter wouldn't allow your lower level Wrath to work. And it's even worse than that if you're like, oh, I'm just gonna get Aura Effect. That also wouldn't work because it would be based off of the amount of attack damage that the Specter gives you rather than the player's attack damage of the Wrath, which would be very difficult to surpass. So essentially, what does this mean for the build? Nothing. It means nothing. You're still using the same Specters. We're just waiting for the fix. They said that they do not have an ETA for it, so it might get fixed this league, next league, 5 leagues from now. I genuinely have no idea. I would imagine all the Specters eventually are going to get nerfed anyway because they're completely overpowered for a lot of builds. But yes, it is confirmed that the Wrath aura does not in fact increase spell damage. However, the reason why we're still using the Specter is because the Spirit's Blessing that makes your lucky lightning damage that some people have been speculating also doesn't apply to spells. I can confirm it does in fact work. They even said there's a buff icon indicating it, which we can see, and they got some people to test it internally and confirm that the buff does in fact work. So keep that in mind. Let's get into the rest of the Specters. Many people have been asking, how do they even work? Does the corpse level matter? The corpse level does not matter as long as you're getting the Specter. The only thing that will determine their strength is going to be the level of your Raiz Specter. What happens when you remove the gem? When you remove the gem, they die. However, if you add the gem back in, you can absolutely resummon them because they drop the corpses on the ground the same way that they would normally. So keep in mind that you can do that. You can mess around with your things and you're not going to lose your Specters necessarily. However, there are some exceptions that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Can you leave them in your hideout? You can in fact leave them in your hideout and they're just going to be there until about 1 minute in when your hideout resets. The portals are still going to be there and your map is going to be, the whole layout is going to be the same. Everything's still going to be there, but the Specters will not. So keep that in mind. That is the exception, that if you leave your hideout, they might disappear immediately or they might disappear after up to a minute. So you don't want to do that. How do we avoid it? We avoid it by having other people in our hideout. Then they don't disappear. We've tested it a lot. As long as there are people in your hideout, it does not reset and the corpses will remain there as long as there is somebody else. So you can go run a map maybe. As long as you have somebody in your hideout, you're still chilling. Can those other people use your corpses in that situation. They cannot. They cannot use the corpses. They are strictly bound to you. If you lose the Specter, if they die, is there any way to get them or desecrate or do anything but just buy them? No, you gotta buy them. You just gotta buy them. That's the only option. And then do they die? Did they ever die for me? I have been killing bosses today, lots of different things, prepping up on hardcore, and honestly, with the current points of having only sacrifice, going through the life regeneration, and then death attunement, I have not seen a single one of these Specters drop below 95% HP. The only exception being one time on an expedition, I tabbed out, and it turns out that this guy was tanking an entire expedition, and he did die, but it took him about 15 seconds to do so. Again, tanking an entire expedition. And also keep in mind that the Cursed Crypt guy, he is a lot squishier compared to the other guys because he is the only one that I see losing HP. And then when it comes to alternatives for the Specters, I ended up using the Curse guy. He is very powerful. I highly recommend him. I think in the end, you can run the Grey Specter. You could run the Zealotry Specter and mess around with using a Purity of Lightning on your cast or something. That's absolutely an option. But I cannot in fact confirm whether or not the Zealotry Specter's Zealotry actually goes beyond the base 10% scaling, as their auras are a little bit different and the access to what information we've got is a little bit limited, but I'm sure that it wouldn't take a whole lot of testing. You just equip 2 different level Specter gems, and I should probably know this, to be honest. Let's get on to some maybe other questions, some end game comparisons, and some other build variants that people have been mentioning other people are using. Does this seem stronger than other spells like Stormburst or Arc Totems? In my opinion, in the end game, in the early game, in the mid game, it is just significantly stronger. It's very difficult to compete with the cooldown recovery on them balls and recasting them, getting that bursty damage from the Ball Lightning, the amount of damage effectiveness that we get with the Arcane Cloak. I don't think there's a larger amount of effectiveness that you can get anywhere with the ability hitting every 150 ms. It is simply crazy. I do have to mention, however, that I have not played Arc in a long time. And then also, when it comes to Stormburst, the only experience that I've had with it was seeing other people's POBs and seeing other people's videos and kind of getting an idea that way. And again, in my eyes, it seriously did not come close to any of the other setups. However, if we are talking specifically about the Ball Lightning, I do know that some crit versions and some poison versions have cropped up. And what are the primary differences? I would say poison overall doesn't really have much of an advantage considering the overall damage output of something like Arcane Cloak. However, it does sacrifice a lot of survivability, and so I thought that might be the end game version of the build, but I don't think it is. I don't think it's better. I'm booping. Or I wouldn't recommend the poison. However, when it comes to the crit, I do believe that if you are playing softcore, because again, I repeat, I am playing on hardcore, currently level 96. Yes, I think that you are sacrificing a lot of survivability, and I do think that survivability for a character such as this one is very, very useful. It also increases the amount of gear that you have to get on the build. But if you want to only ever do the most amount of damage that you possibly could, I think the crit variant is definitely good. I know that people have been mentioning Tati's build. I personally haven't looked at it, but as far as I can imagine, that's pretty much how it's going to be looking. So definitely something if you want to check out. I think it would be valuable. I'm not sure if he's utilizing the Specters, but if he's not, he should probably get on that, because let's get real, they're just way too overpowered on virtually every single build. Okay, this one is a good one, and I think it's gonna save a lot of sweat and tears from a lot of people's experience. The Numlock Trick. So first of all, it's not bannable as far as I know. It never has been. It has never been a problem to anybody who doesn't know what it is from the initial video. The Numlock Trick refers to clicking Numlock to enable it, binding an ability to one of the Numpad keybinds. In my case, it is numpad 1. Holding down the button on the numpad and disabling numlock, which will then result in you infinitely having your convocation rotate over and over as long as you are you have your game in frame, which is incredibly useful because this way we can have Arcane Cloak and Convocation running at the same time. However, what isn't so friendly about it, as you just heard, I have to click a bunch of buttons to accomplish it. So we look for ways to optimize it, and the way that we have found in the end is this script. So this one is going to be in the description. It allows me to set the keybind to F2. You can obviously change this to however you want, but with just a singular press of a button, as long as you have the script open in admin mode, keep that in mind because that was just something that I struggled with. As long as you click that one button, it'll just work. There's no problem. It's a single server-side action. The only thing that's changing is, you know, the numlock on your keyboard. It fully functions, and it's outstanding because I was losing my mind, pressing everything and moving my hands around the keyboard. I know that that's a big struggle for a lot of people. So check out the description for that. And we've got more. Agnostic is another thing that people have been asking about. This refers to the keystone. Maximum energy shield is 0. While not on full life, sacrifice 20% of mana per second to recover that much life. Why don't people use this? Well, there's many different reasons. It does remove your maximum energy shield, so when it comes to a max hit, it does lower your survivability, but as you can see in a character that's fairly decently geared out, but I do focus on mana. I don't really focus as much on defenses or, well, stat defenses. I don't even know how to describe those. I only get 350 energy shield, so would it be much of a sacrifice for me? I don't believe so. However, the way that Agnostic works is that any amount of your HP being reduced, that being a hit, that hits you for any amount, but also any degen. You could be degenerating for 1 HP, and this will proc the maximum amount of mana drain, the 20%. So it makes it very difficult to sustain mana. If you have enough mana regeneration, I have been working on mana regen gear. You can see I have it on my weapon. I have a little bit on my amulet. I've got a little bit on my so far crappy ring, but I'm working on that one. Hopefully you guys can see the result of it in the next video. And I still don't believe that this is enough by any means, because overall you're going to be lowering the amount of mana that you have past the point of it being worth. However, for some of you guys, if you have tremendous amounts of gear, I had to use that word at least once in this video. If you've got enough points, if you've invested enough into mana, maybe you sacrifice some of the life nodes, maybe you're not picking up Sanctity and you're pathing through here instead of Light of Divinity, and then picking up Prodigal Perfection. I can see a situation in which if you are in like 6.5k mana territory, it would be something worth it. I would personally love to use it. I personally love Agnostic and builds that runs Vitality and runs Clarity. Maybe there are situations in which it's gonna work, but yeah, I'm still holding back on it. However, I'm not completely sure if I will use it in the future. That leads us to another question. The Arcane Surge. Why do we use it? Because, as some of you guys have pointed out, if we use the Arcane Blessing, we gain Arcane Surge when you on your totem hit an enemy with a spell, which is very useful because whenever our Arcane Surge from our Arcane Cloak is down, depending on the amount of cooldown recovery that you've got, this procs. But what is the difference between this one and the Arcane Surge that we have in our gloves is that level. This is a level 1 Arcane Surge. This is a level 20 Arcane Surge in my case, which gives me 20% cast speed instead of the base 10%. This does scale overall with the Arcane Surge effects, such as from Arcane Capacitor, which means that in my case, it gives me about 15% cast speed, which personally, as we've discussed in the initial video, cast speed is actually not that useful of a stat. It definitely helps, but I don't think it's worth it, quite frankly. So some of the alternatives that you can use instead of it would maybe be to change up your sockets and use Second Wind on your decoy totem. This will allow you to cast 2 decoy totems at once without having to wait for the cooldown, and then give you the maximum benefits from Ritual of Awakening. That's something that you can do. Honestly, that's probably it. I'm sure some people in the comments are gonna post some alternatives. There are other ways of doing this, but I find that one to most likely be the most useful one. Oh, I guess another thing that I actually forgot to write down on the list is the 6-link question. In the initial video, I only ever had a 5-link. I mean, many people have been asking me about what is my 6-link going to be? And I confidently gave the answer of it being controlled destruction, which really complicates our sockets because we need 3 red and 3 blue on a base that's got evasion for the suppression. And as you can see, I am not using it. I am using hypothermia. I tried control destruction. It is 10% more damage than hypothermia, but unfortunately, even with crit to spells on both my shield and my weapon at the time, I just didn't have enough to have a comfortable amount of elemental overload uptime. So I had to think of alternatives, and the best alternative that I came up with was hypothermia and using a incredibly OP charm, which is this one. Nearby enemies are chilled. This charm on my setup gives me 13% chance to chill in a, or 13% chill in a 6-meter radius. So it's the same as Occultist. It's very big. It's about all the way from my character to the edge of my screen. And this allows me to pretty much always have hypothermia active with this setup. Not only does it give me a large amount of survivability, but also it allows me to use this, which I think is very big value. If you don't want to chill, if you don't want to use the jewel, as you can, the charm, as you can see, I don't even have my last one. I'm still working on that. But another one that you could be using would be less duration, which gives you, I believe, 19% more. It's very difficult to calculate in POB what exactly is happening when it comes to these, because a +1 with an awakened added lightning would also be useful. This would allow us to get in +1 to our lightning abilities, which yeah, allows us our Ball Lightning to go to 22. In general, +1 to lightning is very useful because it also, on our gear, that is, on our weapon or on our amulet or on our shield, because it does affect Arcane Cloak. So in that way, it does kind of double dip. But as I'm going to be talking in the gear video, I ended up not doing that. So yeah, you can use less duration. It will only affect the duration of your totems, which is seriously not a problem, because without it, my totem uptime is 22 seconds almost. And then obviously, if you want even more, you can pick up Totem Exile, which I didn't bother with. So with the less duration, you would totally still be fine to run it. And Ball Lightning, actually, contrary to popular belief, does not have a duration tag, so you cannot modify it in any way, which is one of the biggest weaknesses of this build. But when it comes to the less duration, you can totally run that, and it will have a great effect. I think that's pretty much it. I think we've covered just about everything. If you guys have more questions, maybe we're gonna do a part 2. I believe those are the most frequently asked questions, and some of the questions that showed up that don't have a simple answer that somebody can simply look up. And yeah, that's gonna be it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Again, if you're interested in the build, go check out the build diary, go check out the build guide, and make sure to check out the next video that might already be uploaded, where I'm going to be discussing the way that I upgraded my gear and continue to upgrade my gear. And hopefully very soon, I'm gonna have my final gear set up that I'm gonna be able to post for you guys. So yeah, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe. Stop by the Twitch stream, and I'll see you guys soon. Thanks. Bye.